Hello, good evening and welcome to the program. This is BizFirst Review 360, your weekly dose of the top business news in the country. I'm Nadim Maji. We kick off this week's program with the troubled national carrier SriLankan Airlines. The state-run enterprise is looking to cut losses and is also scouting around for a private sector partner.
Private equity firm TPG and fund company BlackRock Incorporated are among half a dozen firms which have shown interest in a 49% stake in SriLankan Airlines Limited, a Reuters report said.
What we inherited was quite a mess, and the mandate that we had from the government was essentially to reduce the losses, to improve productivity, change the culture of the airline, and prepare the airline for a public-private partnership. The fact that in the last 5 months of this financial year, that is till April to the end of August, we have further reduced our losses, and there is a 37% improvement now as compared to April this year. In fact, the group loss is 2.32 billion. As opposed to the previously it was 3.71 at the end of the for the 5-month period last year. And what is interesting is that of this, the interest cost alone was 2.53 billion. We inherited a huge debt when we took over the running of this company, and that alone the government has made a pledge to take away from the balance sheet of SriLankan Airlines. What that means is that when the private-public partnership starts, you will have a pretty clean sort of a balance sheet.
The airline's restructuring is part of a broader move by the government to reduce dependency on state coffers and cut debt. SriLankan Airlines reported a net loss of 16.33 billion rupees for the year to March 31st, narrower than its 31.4 billion rupee loss a year earlier on lower oil prices. It last made a profit in 2009, a year after Emirates sold its stake. The airline cancelled an order for 4 A350 aircraft in a bid to reduce losses.
We have terminated the leases on these aircrafts, which means that they will not be coming to the fleet of SriLankan Airlines, which was always the intention of government. There are 4 more A350s that have been contracted from 2020 onwards, and the decision on those we will leave to the new partner, whoever he is, who takes part of the airline in the near future.
SriLankan is now focusing on more profitable regional routes and cutting long-haul European routes that are unprofitable. SriLankan is expecting delivery of 5 A320 short-haul aircraft in 2017 and another in 2018 to deploy on regional routes.
The narrow-bodied aircraft from January next year, yes, that is for our regional network. We'll fly those to Hong Kong, more flights to India, more flights to the region. The immediate plan is to absorb the Mihin routes, which is going to happen over the next month. And then, of course, prepare for the runway closure. The runway closure in Colombo is going to be a big problem for us, and we are making a contingency plan to be able to cope with that. The terminal, for example, will get very crowded because once the runway reopens, there'll be about 20 departures, and we just don't have enough space in the terminal. So that's going to be, over the next 6 months, that's going to be the single biggest challenge we face.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had a very busy week indeed, travelling from Auckland to New Delhi, New Zealand to India, trying to get business and investment to take interest in Sri Lanka and to come to Sri Lanka. How successful was he? We spoke to several economists and foreign policy experts to assess and evaluate the impact of the Prime Minister's visits to India and New Zealand.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe announced in New Delhi that Sri Lanka and India had decided to ink the controversial Economic and Technology Agreement, or ECTA, by the end of 2016 with the aim of boosting trade and service between the two countries.
India-Sri Lanka FTA between the two countries will be further expanded and deepened to go beyond trading goods to cover trade in services, investments and technology cooperation. The proposed economic and technology cooperation agreement will be signed by the end of this year. Prime Minister Modi and I decided we must conclude it by end of this year. The ETCA offers a strategic economic advantage to our country and the fastest growing southern Indian states. These 5 southern states, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Telangana have a population of 250 million people and a combined GDP of nearly US 450 billion. With the addition of Sri Lanka's 22 million and US 80 billion economy, the GDP in this sub-region will be US 500 billion. That is Sweden. This is without getting together. Just imagine if we work together. ECTA has the potential to promote a rapid growth of US 500 billion sub-regional economy.
Wickremesinghe's New Delhi visit comes at a time when SAARC is at a crisis point. Delivering a lecture on Sri Lanka and its place in the world at the New Zealand Parliament House in Auckland, the Sri Lankan Premier said that the failure of SAARC to deliver acceptable results for all members would spell out a bleak future, and it would also compel Sri Lanka to look towards other viable options. We spoke to economists and foreign policy experts for an assessment of Premier Wickremesinghe's visit to New Zealand and India.
In response to what the Honourable Prime Minister said about the future of SAARC and Sri Lanka's place in SAARC, I feel that what he's trying to say is that regionalism has not worked for Sri Lanka, and we have to look at alternative ways of finding better cooperation. So that can be either by more bilateral agreements with the rest of the world, which means we can move out of the regional mentality. So, which is in a way what he's trying to say is SAARC is restricting us within the region, but with other alternative forms of relations and agreements, we can look beyond that. I think that's what he's trying to say. At the moment, I think Sri Lanka needs to reach out to any country which would be mutually beneficial in a trade or economic cooperation setup. So I think the way the current government and the Prime Minister and President is reaching out to countries that we usually did not is a good thing. And of course, there is a deep economic relations between Sri Lanka and New Zealand in certain specific industries. So I think it's good to reach out, go beyond. I mean, countries are struggling being in regions. Regionalism is in a way falling apart. Some regional arrangements such as ASEAN is working because ASEAN is very innovative. ASEAN has many other countries at play. Though they are a regional group, they have kind of in a way managed to work with many other countries and other regional partners.
As awareness among society begins to rise when it comes to financial crimes or white-collar crimes, the Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has signed an MOU with the Immigration and Emigration Department to target financial crime, to combat financial crime and to arrest terrorism financing.
The central bank said the MOU allows the two institutions to share information in order to facilitate investigations and prosecutions on money laundering and terrorist financing. The central bank said money laundering and terror financing are internationally connected financial crimes which could threaten the stability of global economic and financial systems. With increased cross-border movement of people and goods, money laundering and terrorist financing have become difficult to detect. Domestic coordination and cooperation between the FIU and the Department of Immigration and Emigration will help Sri Lanka in preventing and combating illicit cross-border movement of people or goods and establish stronger border control systems in the country. The FIU has already entered into similar MOUs with Sri Lanka Customs, while arrangements are being made to sign MOUs with other relevant domestic government agencies.
Colombo gears up to host the World Export Development Forum 2016. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back to BizFirst Review 360. Now, from the 12th of October, Sri Lanka will be playing host to the World Export Development Forum 2016, or WEDF, W-E-D-F. given that Sri Lanka is sort of facing an export crisis at present, how important are forums like these for the country? I spoke to Fazal Mushin, the chairman of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, who is also the co-chair of the steering committee for WEDIF 2016. So how big of a deal is it for Sri Lanka to be hosting the World Export Development Forum 2016, or WEDIF? To talk about this and more, we're joined by Mr. Fazal Mushin, who is the chairman of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka and is also the co-chair of the steering committee organizing WEDIF 2016. Thank you very much, Fazal, for joining this first review. So let me ask you, you're from the private sector.
Yes.
This is jointly organized by the International Trade Center and the EDB.
Yes.
So linking up with the EDB and organizing forums of this nature, how does this help broaden the export base of Sri Lanka, specifically from the point of view of the private sector?
You need to look at this from a short, medium and long term. In the past, we have had where exporters wanted to feel inclusive in policy, in shaping exports and how the country's exports would improve given the global scenario right now, competitiveness, productivity, which we are falling behind. And after the era of good governance, the government started listening to what the exporters were saying. And one of our core issues was to made inclusive of what happens in running or policy related to exports. And the EDB...
So when you say policy related, I suppose for the private sector specifically, and for Sri Lanka, a big issue is access to markets.
Yes, yes.
So will forums alone suffice in getting that access to markets?
Very much so, because you have to understand EDB is the focal point in promoting exports from Sri Lanka. So when you look at promotion, any promotion that will focus Sri Lanka to the global market space will highlight the products available, the people, the resources. We have limitations. We have issues regarding the basket of products. So with little we have, the more we get exposed and more focus there is towards this country and the potential of this country, where we can improve from where we are now and then continue making alliances with potential buyers, potential markets that we can enter which we have never gone into. This definitely helps, and this forum coming is a huge benefit to the country.
Would you mark it as a sign of confidence?
Of course, of course. Not. I mean, it's a sign of confidence that the world is placing on Sri Lanka at the moment, given the transition that it has taken place. That we need help, and we need every bit of attention that anyone can give us, and that's always positive.
I'd like to talk to you about the theme for WEDIF 2016, which is Trade for Success: Connect, Compete, and Change. Now, right now in Sri Lanka, when we talk about trade, you have protectionist elements that are always focusing on maybe our inability to be competitive with big players in the world. So how do you view that as the chairman of the Exporters Association, as co-chair of WEDIF?
As chairman of the co-chair of the steering committee, it's a privilege for us to be able, for the first time, to work alongside the EDB, and now we call them colleagues rather than our opposites in the government. With that, we have brought together several other chambers involved in exports, and we are all working together as one team. It has built a better understanding and respect among both sides of the table that we are working together. That alone shows a huge stride that we have made.
But in terms of competition, so trade for success, connect, compete.
So coming to that, we have to understand that we have a limitation in the product baskets, the products in our basket that we have at the moment. We need to move away from the traditional to new value addition. We need to make use of the space that we have here in utilizing our resources, the competency of human resource here, our geographical location, the fact that we are just across to India, we are in the shipping lanes, the Silk Road. Now, these things have to work in partnership with private sector and government, that we alone cannot walk this road. We need to walk along with partnering with government and open our minds to other than the traditional basket of products.
So, Mr. Mushin, can I ask you, at the end of WEDIF 2016, as the co-chair of the steering committee, what are the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve? If you had to pick...
If we set goals for the outcome of this, the relationships and the better understanding between private sector and government for us to work as partners. That's the biggest achievement that if we have achieved in this exercise. Then to able to connect with the rest of the world, to expose what potential Sri Lanka has from the raw material, the geographical, the human resource, the infrastructure, and we have, for instance, we have got about 130 odd companies coming here specifically for B2B. So if we get at least 10% to connect, that's a huge incremental value that will add to the export basket. So we are not trying to, we can't create this overnight, but we want to take these small steps that will help in the incremental value of export growth. That is our immediate goals that we are expecting to achieve.
So a quick glance at the program for WEDIF 2016, and you see there's a lot of focus on digital, going digital, embracing e-commerce. There's also focus on gender empowerment in a way as well through empowering women entrepreneurs. What was the logic that was going through or what was the thought process that was going through the steering committee's mind in drafting the program for WEDIF 2016?
See, the program itself is designed for ITC. We add to whatever they suggest in terms of how we will organize it around the programs that they determine that are critical to Sri Lanka. E-commerce, we are very far back in e-commerce. We don't have, most other countries are thriving on e-commerce. That's an untapped universe for us. We have the potential to participate in e-commerce. Going digital, that's the norm today. Everything from our day-to-day life, everything is on the digital platform. So it's good for us to embrace this new, because we have, if you look at the ITC industry in Sri Lanka's growth, we have the talent pool, we are having people designing apps. Now why not embrace the retail space? Why not go to the consumer market? Empowerment, I think Sri Lanka has been one of the few countries that have always empowered women, but we still need to make more strides, because we are living in a world where there is equality and there is no gender imbalance. So we need to take the women from where they are,
especially in the business sector in Sri Lanka,
and we need to make them come as business leaders. We want them not to be working as housemaids. We want everyone to be educated. We need them to make, everyone's aspirations to have a better tomorrow.
Be enterprising.
And the women have a lot to contribute. So we would like to see that take place.
Mr. Mushin, thank you very much for speaking to Biz First Review. I wish you all the best for a successful conference. Some very interesting thoughts there from the chairman of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. It'll be interesting to see if WEDIF 2016 delivers the outcomes that he and in fact the entire business community in Sri Lanka is waiting for. Keep watching Biz First Review 360. On the other side of this commercial break, ETCA. Why has it become such a controversy? Welcome back to the program. So tonight on our segment Speak Your Mind, we bring you highlights of our program Face the Nation, which is telecast on Monday, where we probe experts on the pros and cons of the highly controversial Economic and Technology Cooperation Agreement that is due to be signed between Sri Lanka and India.
The issue is, there are some people who do not like trade agreements because they think that the government and the politicians in power should have the discretion to take whatever decisions they want, and they should be free to change their minds. What trade agreements do is that it constrains the vacillation and the policy uncertainty of politicians being allowed to change their minds. Secondly, I think there is a real issue in Sri Lanka, which is sort of built into the genes of our people, which is that we don't want to do any kind of agreements with India. This goes back to the 12th century and the Chola invasions. So trade agreements, some people are opposed to trade agreements. Some people are opposed to trade agreements with India, but not with other countries. The reality is that our exports have dropped, as everybody knows. As a percentage of our GDP, exports are quite low now. And if you look at competitive countries, comparable countries like Vietnam, Vietnam has since about 2004, when all these things stopped, Vietnam has increased its exports 9 times, right? We have increased our exports only twofold. And Vietnam has been, which is run by a communist country, which places great emphasis on national sovereignty. Vietnam has been signing agreements left and right. They are perhaps one of the countries with the highest number of trade agreements. They are in fact party to the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They are also party to the alternative to TPP. If TPP doesn't happen, there will be something called RCEP, which is the ASEAN Plus agreement. They will be party to that.
What are we trying to achieve? We are trying to make this country a hub for various sorts, whether it is financial, shipping, logistics, manufacturing. Without trade agreements, who's going to come to this country to invest? Because we need to get market access. I'm glad that the government is negotiating with Singapore. Forget about the ITCA first. They're negotiating with Singapore, they're negotiating with China. They should negotiate with the United States before going into TPP, in my personal belief. Right? They should go into trying to negotiate with United Kingdom. Right? Sri Lanka, if we have to be a hub, we cannot give in to protectionist continuously. Okay, if there's reasonable argument, reasonable points put on, I think the government is willing to listen. And we started the Indo-Lanka with a lot of protests at that time, the 1998, I think originally there were a lot of protests. So we have moved forward. We should move further forward. And I think ETCA is a direction, it's the right direction to move forward.
From 2010, we should have directed the country in terms of what Professor Rohan Samarji has said in terms of Vietnam. Vietnam ended the war in 1976, but they never liberalized or they never started signing agreements from 1978 onwards. They were closed until 2004. What they did during that period of 28 years? They make all the necessary legal enactments, regulations, and they were ready to liberalize. Now what we are saying, as part of UPM, as part of OPA, everywhere, we are neither opposing nor supportive of any trade agreement. What we are saying is, we have to put our house in order if we want to move forward.
What do you mean by putting the house in order?
Let me say, take very few examples. Look at Sri Lankan immigration laws and compared with all the other immigration laws in the region. We are far behind. Take in the professional registration mechanisms in terms of other countries. We don't have the concept called national registration.
Mode 4 has 4 subsectors. Under Mode 4 there are what you call, first is corporate transferees. That is, a corporate employee of a particular entity is coming to the other country to provide service. Say for example there's a bank or a hotel, and that particular person is transferred to Sri Lanka. He serves there 2 or 3 years and he goes back. It's a corporate transferee. Then the second person is a contractual supplier. That a person or an entity or a foreign company will get a contract for services, supplying of a particular service, say for airport or laying some pipes or some contract he gets. To under contractual suppliers, he comes to service that contract and finish that period and he goes back. And the third category is the business visits. A business visitor comes to a country to provide the service not for sale, direct sales, to conduct a workshop or seminar or to do marketing or something, then he attends and goes. Then the fourth category is this controversy. Independent professionals move into the other country to provide service. Those are the architects, doctors or accountants or lawyers, independent professionals moving. So under the current law, current BI regime, all that, the corporate transferees, contractual suppliers, business visitors, under the normal immigration laws of the country, under normal procedure, they come.
That is not a problem.
That's not a problem. It
Yes.
is happening.
Yes.
But what we are talking is about the independent professionals moving to the country. That we have categorically said no.
This is about suppliers who are not mindful of competition and higher quality for the consumer, who are only interested in upping their benefits, getting their car permits, getting their children into popular schools and getting various privileges, who are trying to protect their positions, wanting the government to protect them from any competition.
And that's a wrap of our program tonight. Don't forget to look us up on Facebook, BizFirst Review 360. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you again next week, same time, same place.